This is a video of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. This is a summary of chapters 11 all the way to chapter 20. Last time we left off, well, there were a bunch of gypsies who just arrived at the place. At least that's how my memory remembers. If it's otherwise, well then just tell me that already, will you guys? Regardless, this is what happens. What they did was, all the gypsies came and they had a bunch of new inventions. Well, they called it magic, but obviously they were science. They included the light bulbs, and they even included a bunch of other things, like electricity, and so other people were kind of scared by them. However, Jose himself was already probably dead, and everyone else was just kind of like, hey, I don't really want to go to the fair. In fact, Jose, the founder of Maconda, as well as the patriarch of the Maconda family, which is the Buendias, they went ahead and did a bunch of other things. His own son, who was a lot like him, basically decided that he was not going to pity with all these things. In fact, he doesn't really care about all these things. He'd just rather stay inside the workshop than see a magic carpet flying around or someone just harnessing the power of electricity. He found solace in his own little works, and he was happy with that. So I'm just leaving him to it. Elsewhere, Ursula, who is the matriarch of the family, is still alive. Which is not pretty much a surprise. Jose is still alive too. However, she is kind of old as well too. Jose dies, and so many other things happen as well too. Ursula is finally just living. The colonel, who we found at the start of the book, is finally shot through the head and died, as it was supposed to happen at the start of the book, before he went ahead and did his recollections. Later on, what he did next was kind of bone-ripping. Somehow, Ursula was able to outlive all of her 3 children, and then she became blind, but she never told anyone because, she became blind, but she never told anyone that because she could still see things properly, just not see things as if see. It's like using the survivor sense to see things, like some creatures use their vibrations to just see their things, like rattlesnakes. Yeah, rattlesnakes. So she never told everyone. She also learned a great deal, like how if you deviate from your normal path of habits, like she finally found the routine of everyone. Everyone seemed to do something different every day, but they did similar things, variations of the same thing every day. It's just that when they went ahead and went astray from that habit, that's when they lost things. Like when someone was decided, like one of her grandkids were like, I lost something. She remembered that she always went through this and this kind of habit, but then she went from this way, and then she thought that sometime in this period she lost that thing. So she checked the place where she was that was irregular, and then she found what she lost, what her daughter lost. And of course, she still never told anyone of that. She also never told anyone that she had acquaintances with these invisible spiritual surgeons who could do magic little surgeries on her, and that they were prepping her for some surgery to save her life. That sounds really plausible in my opinion. I mean, do you really believe this? I mean, it is plausible, sure, surgeons can save her life, but invisible spiritual surgeons? Yeah, I think I'd rather put my bet on the human life and flesh ones than using telepathy to heal myself. Regardless of all that, there is so much other things that we can do. Finally, there's a war that broke out. The colonel, this is the reason why the colonel was being executed. There were basically 2 of these factions, the liberals and the conservatives. Now, this guy was a liberal, so he went to fight the conservatives, and boom, baya, he was basically crushed. And so he got to work, and he was able to recapture Maconda, his grandpa, come to think of it. His grandpa, or also known as dad. I'm getting confused by all these Aurelianos. Regardless, some kind of father or grandfather, something on those kinds of lines, where he went ahead and was able to recapture Maconda. But then later, Maconda fell back into the hands of those people, and then, well, he was executed. After several more shenanigans, there was definitely so much more trouble that literally happened. The war was over, yay, and then a banana plantation was able to post itself nearby Maconda, and they had a bunch of, well, a bunch of workers happening to just live there as well too, and obviously they were not happy with it because instead of being paid in dollar bills, or actually more likely pesos, or if this is in Spain, whatever currency the Spanish use, they were paid in these little slips of paper that they could just give back toward the owners so they can get a share of the food that they helped grow. So essentially, they were getting less food than they had, and they aren't even paid money. They're only given food. They don't even have the necessities, the other necessities, that is. Skip a few hundred years. Actually, not a few hundred years, just skip 100 years. You finally get towards the last surviving members of the plantations. What happened towards that banana plantation, you ask? Well, obviously it is illegal to sell those tickets, and so finally we find someone reading a manuscript about what happened. The banana plantation had a bunch of these armies, and so when the workers went on strike, they were all like, give us real money, and then they saw the government's army arrive, and they're like, government, help us, they're oppressing us. And then the plantation shot them, and the government shot them. This was obviously not expected, and they were all shocked. Eventually, the banana plantation workers just came back, and they realized that they had no rights at all. That the plantation workers could just shoot them whenever they wanted. Anywho, after we just skip ahead to 100 years after the start of the book, and we find this guy, the last surviving member of the Buendias, who also had a pigtail because, well, his mom and dad were from the same family. He was reading a little manuscript. It was a bunch of prophecies created by the gypsy who was befriended by Jose at the beginning of the book. Regardless, he found out that it was in a different language, so he learned how to translate that language into Spanish. Afterwards, he realized that it was in code, and after a while, he decoded that code. And then he read the whole story of what happened to his family, and he realized that it was prophesied 100 years ago. And which book do you think that is? Da-da! It's this book. Anyway, it is kind of ironic as well too. We are reading a book, at least I am reading a book that is translated from Spanish to a different language, and we are from a language to a different language, and that is technically how we're reading it. It's also kind of difficult to read, and as it is described in the book, this somehow combines the past, the present, and the future into one thing. Instead of one chronological flow, we get this magical flow of colors. We get the past, the present, and the future into a kind of a big jumble of a mess. As the past, the present, and the future collide, we get a bunch of infinite possibilities. But even with those infinite possibilities, there is still a lot that we learned. Just because this magic cannot happen in real life doesn't mean that it does not exist. We learn a lot from all these people, and I intend that we learn something from them. From all those dots that we have to connect, we have to weave them together into this one intricate story of both present and the past, as well as the future, into one thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed that summary of chapters 11 to 20, and I hope to see you guys soon. Until next time, peace, bye bye.